Hello guys, welcome again. In this video, we'll explore different forms of deductive and inductive arguments, or typical kinds of inductive and deductive arguments, because understanding this form is crucial for effective reasoning, and it helps us to analyze the strength and validity of various claims. So let's get started. And let's begin from instances of deductive argument or typical kinds of inductive arguments. Here, deductive arguments, as we have said earlier, have a distinctive character, suggesting that the premises provide absolute or certain support for the conclusion. So here are some common forms of deductive arguments. The first one is argument based on mathematics. This type of arguments rely on mathematical computations or measurements. For example, if you say that if you have 4 apples and you buy 3 more, you will have a total of 7 apples. So as it is indicated in the argument, the conclusion necessarily or absolutely follows from the mathematical premises. And if we hold the premises are true, the conclusion cannot be false. However, you should have to not forget this. While mathematical arguments are deductive, it is important to know that statistics often rely on inductive reasoning. And the second typical kind of deductive argument is argument based on definition. Argument based on definition asserts that conclusion depends only on the meanings of words or phrases. Or conclusion solely, that is to mean that only on the meaning of words or phrases. Let's see an example. Here, all bachelors are unmarried man. John is a bachelor, therefore John is unmarried. Here, the conclusion follows necessarily from the definition of bachelor and unmarried. And the third instance of deductive argument is, or form of deductive argument is, categorical syllogism. Actually, syllogism is an argument with 2 premises and 1 conclusion. So categorical syllogism, as a syllogistic argument, consists of 2 premises leading to a conclusion, and often use terms like all, no, or some in the beginning of its statements. Let's see an example. If we say that all mammals are warm-blooded and all dogs are mammals, therefore all dogs are warm-blooded. This argument, as it is indicated, is deductive because the conclusion necessarily follows from the premise. If all mammals are warm-blooded and all dogs are mammals, we are certain that all dogs are warm-blooded. And the fourth typical kinds of deductive argument is hypothetical syllogism. This syllogism contain conditional statements. For example, if it rains, then the ground will be wet. It is raining, therefore the ground is wet. Here, as you observe from the example, the conclusion, that means the ground is wet, must be true if we hold the premises are true, and making this argument a deductive one. And the last form of, or typical kinds of deductive argument is disjunctive syllogism. Disjunctive syllogism involves an either or statement within the argument. Let's consider this example. Either the light is on or the light is off. The light is not off, therefore the light is on. Here again, if our premise is true in this example, the conclusion must also be true. That's why I said that there is a deductive form or deductive argument. Then let's proceed to instances of inductive argument forms. Inductive argument In contrary to deductive arguments, aim to extend conclusions beyond the premise. And here are several common forms of inductive arguments. The first one is prediction. Inductive argument often involves prediction about the future events based on the current or past evidence. For example, if we say that the sky is cloudy and the weather forecast predicts rain, therefore it will likely rain today. In this example, the conclusion it will likely rain today extends beyond the premise. While it is probable to rain, but still we are not certain whether it will rain or not. And the second typical kinds of inductive argument or form of argument, inductive argument form is argument from analogy. This argument relies on similarities between two different situations or objects. Let's see an example. Just as a well-maintained car runs smoothly and efficiently, a well-maintained computer should also run smoothly. Therefore, this computer will likely run efficiently if it is well-maintained. Here, since this is just an example, like since A has characteristics of A, B, C, and B has characteristics of A, B has characteristics of C. The conclusion of this argument suggests a similarity. But still the inference is probabilistic, not certain. And the third typical kinds of inductive argument is inductive generalization. Inductive generalization draws conclusion about a whole group based on a sample. By starting from some sample, we may draw a conclusion. This is inductive generalization. Let's see an example. In a survey of 1,000 voters, 70% indicated they support the new policy. Therefore, it's reasonable to conclude that about 70% of all voters support the new policy. Here, the conclusion generalizes from a sample to a larger group. And that's why we make an argument an inductive one. And the fourth typical kinds of inductive argument or form of inductive argument is arguments from authority. This argument relies on statements made by an authority or figure. For example, if we say that according to Dr. Smith, a leading expert in nutrition, this diet is effective for weight loss. Therefore, it is likely that this diet will help with weight loss. Here, this conclusion relies on Dr. Smith's authority But it is probabilistic because the expert could be mistaken. And the fifth typical kinds of inductive argument or forms of inductive argument is argument based on sign or symbol. This argument draws a conclusion based on evidence of signs or symbols. Let's consider this example. Here, the roads are wet, which indicates that it has rained. Therefore, it's probably rained recently. Here, the conclusion is based on observational signs, making it inductive, since the sign might not always be accurate. The road may be wet without rain. And the sixth inductive form or typical kinds of inductive argument is causal inferences. Here, causal inference connect cause to effects or effects to causes. Let's say an example. The ground is muddy, suggesting that it has recently rained. Therefore, it likely rained. This argument is inductive because the conclusion is based on the observed effect rather than the definitive proof or certain proof. That's why we said that causal inferences are typical kinds of inductive arguments. To sum up, distinguishing between deductive and inductive arguments involves recognizing distinctive forms and understanding how conclusions relate to premises. Deductive arguments provide absolute support for their conclusion, while inductive arguments suggest probable conclusion based on evidence. Thank you for joining me today. If you find this video helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning and exploring the world of logic.